Whether you're in North or South Carolina or anywhere else in the world, enter the Cat Cave with Ryan Frick and Shannon Smith to listen to your favorite Carolina Panthers podcast as a part of the Keep Pounding Podcast Network, where you can find shows like Embrace Debate and Inside the Vault, powered by the Fans First Sports Network. Yes, you heard it right. Ryan Frick, Shannon Smith back in here with you this week. Shannon, what's going on, bud?
Oh man, not too much, but it's about to get a little busy for us with football season coming up, man. It was great to be back last week for another good episode. This time around, you get to do the hosting where you usually belong, so we're going to be in good hands.
Yeah, listen, this might be one of the shortest episodes that we ever do of the Cat Cave. And if you listen to Tap Outs and Touchdowns last week, former host of the show, Michael Davis, asked if I was going to finish my show with a joke. And I signed off a Tap Outs and Touchdowns football episode last week as we will see you back here inside the Cat Cave. So I can assure you this truly is the Cat Cave. And we got a little bit of news because we only got about a week and a half before the NFL. Matter of fact, no, just about a week before the NFL season kicks off, as it kicks off a week from, I'm assuming this is going to go out on Thursday. Yep. So a week from today, the NFL season will kick off.
Yep.
But let's get talking to some Carolina Panthers because they just had their cuts this week, their roster cuts. I believe I counted 32 players cut by the Carolina Panthers. And if you're watching the show on the Tobacco Road Sports Radio's YouTube channel, you'll be able to see scrolling across the ticker all the players that were cut. Guys like you wouldn't be surprised about, like Jack Plummer. You knew with Andy Dalton and Bryce Young, you knew they weren't probably gonna roster a third quarterback. Some tight ends, Jacob Hollister, former Seattle Seahawk guy, cut. A couple of offensive linemen. We knew that they were loading up on the offensive linemen in the offseason to protect Bryce Young. But one name stands out, Shannon, and that's wide receiver Terrace Marshall Jr., drafted, I believe, back in 2018? I don't know exactly what year he was drafted, but we waited for a long time to watch Terrace Marshall potentially become the next big wide receiver in the Panthers franchise history. Coming out of LSU with guys like Justin Jefferson and Jamar Chase, we thought that we had one of those, stud wide receivers in Terrace Marshall Jr. Shannon, what are your thoughts on the Panthers finally cutting ties with the former LSU Tiger?
I hate it because, like you said, he had good company around him. And LSU is being in the debate of being called wide receiver U, considering the fact that Jamar Chase, Justin Jefferson, Odell Beckham Jr. were wide receivers there that were very dynamic players. And Terrace Marshall Jr. has some good company there. But I do think it was time for the Carolina Panthers to cut ties with him. I mean, I hate it because, the fruition and everything. Trying to have him mature, have him be breakout. It just hasn't happened. But I will say this, it was kind of tough for him considering the fact of the revolving door of coaches. But then again, you also got to accredit that to the fact that, hey, you're a professional now. You've got to get yourself developed. But I do think that Terrace Marshall Jr., he'll have a chance to go with another team. He'll have to have a chance because, he's done with the Panthers. So maybe he can go and foster that talent somewhere else. It's just it was a shame that it wasn't here in Carolina.
Yeah, listen, I'm not going to disagree with you there. I mean, it was one of those things that the offense has been a middling offense since the Carolina Panthers owner took over as owner. Whether it was Cam Newton, whether it was Sam Darnold, or so on and so forth, the offense hasn't been good. And you sort of expected Terrace Marshall to eventually step up, and he didn't. And while I'm not surprised by the move, I am disappointed in the fact that Terrace Marshall never stepped up. But that's why you play the game. I mean, there's plenty of guys that played in college that sort of fizzled out. You think about another tight end that was cut by the Panthers today in Felipe Franks, former Florida Gator, transferred to Arkansas, undrafted free agent by the Atlanta Falcons in 2021, did not make the cut here for the Carolina Panthers. Again, it's Jordan Matthews, a tight end, former wide receiver longtime NFL player Jordan Matthews transitioned to tight end like former Panthers wide receiver Kelvin Benjamin did. He also did not make the list. I think the other notable name to talk about is running back Mike Boone. The coaches were very high on him in training camp. They said he had a lot of energy. He was high motor. But again, similar to the offensive linemen, we weren't surprised to see some linemen get cut. I wasn't surprised to see a running back get cut here. The running back room is deep between Chuba Hubbard and Miles Sanders, along with some other. There was also Rashad Penny, who was in the running back room, retired. I'm not sure if you paid attention to that, but he retired a few weeks ago. But regardless, the running back room was deep because the Panthers struggled to run the ball, and they're hoping that Mike Boone clears waivers and joins the team as a practice squad running back in case of injury. So again, you can look up the Panthers cuts. There weren't a lot of guys outside of Terrace Marshall and potentially Mike Boone that you were expecting to see cut, or that you weren't expecting to see cut, I should say. It's not like they went out and cut J.C. Horn or Davian Clowney. There are a couple of injury news. I believe DJ Wanham, and I don't know why I can't say it off the top of my head, will not be making the first 4 games of the year, starting off on the unable to perform list. So they're going to have some struggles early on, are the Carolina Panthers. And speaking of Carolina Panthers and struggling early on, we're going to move into predicting the 2024-2025 Carolina Panthers record here on the show. Next week, we'll probably break down a little bit more of their game against New Orleans. But this week, we're going to sort of kind of do an overview on how we think their season is going to go. Remember, last year, they were abysmal on offense, competent on defense. But we know what happened. They wound up with the number 1 overall pick that they had already traded away to the Chicago Bears. And now Carolina Panthers looks to officially start their rebuild here in 2024. Shannon, where do you see the Panthers going this year from a record standpoint, considering there's really not many places to go but up from last season?
I do think that regardless of how last year went, I really think that they may be the 3rd best team in the NFC South right now. I'm not really high on the Saints. I'm not high on them. I don't think the Saints are going. I think the Saints are going to underachieve this year. I do believe Tampa Bay is still formidable, defending champion of the NFC South. They're still formidable. Atlanta is still formidable to me. I don't really see the Saints being that formidable. So I think that Carolina has the potential to get that 3rd spot. But to be honest with you, let's be real. The NFC South is very, very weak as opposed to other conferences. Like when I look at the NFC East, I see 2 potential squads that could be either 1, 2, 3, or 4. I look at the NFC West. I see a potential NFC champion in the San Francisco 49ers. I see the Rams contending. When I look at the NFC North to me looks like a gauntlet. I really think it's going to be a gauntlet this year.
With the exception of the Vikings, but we can talk about that.
Yeah, I mean, of course, you're gonna have that. You're gonna have those 3 teams, and then you're gonna have that one team that's just like an outlier. And the Vikings are gonna be that outlier in the NFC North. I mean, there's gonna be a fight in the NFC North. I predict it will be a fight, but it might not be. But yet and still, I see a potential NFC champion Detroit. In the NFC South, I don't see but one team going to the playoffs, and that will be the division winner. That's the only thing that I see. I hate to feel that way. I hate to sound that way, but that's what I see out of that. I expect Carolina to be at most the 3rd best team in the NFC South. I hope I'm wrong, but that's
so with the third best record in the South, or the 2nd worst, if you want to call it, where do you think they finish from a win-loss standpoint? Are we talking 7-10, 6-11? Like where do you have them finishing on the season?
I would probably venture and say about 5-12. I see 5 wins. I see 5 wins.
Shannon predicts 5-12 after a 2-15 season. not going on that much of a ledge saying they're only going to be 3 games better than last year. And listen, nobody would blame you for doing it. However, I'm going to be the ultimate optimist on this show. You're probably not going to be able to see what this is, but every year for my other podcast, Tap Outs and Touchdowns, I do a full breakdown where I go through each team's schedule and I pick wins and losses. And I kid you not when I say this, I have every single team in the NFC South finishing 8-9. Every single team. Total accident. But I've got every team finishing 8-9. Obviously, tiebreakers would come into play when it comes to who wins the division. But I've got Carolina starting off 2-3 with wins on the road at Vegas and at Chicago. You mentioned the NFC North sort of being a gauntlet division. I still don't have high hopes for the Chicago Bears. Caleb Williams looked great in the preseason, but there's a lot of teams that didn't play their starters in the preseason. I mean, Kansas City played for a quarter against the Detroit Lions. The Lions didn't play their starters. The Panthers did play a little bit of their starters this past weekend, but not much. A lot of teams weren't going to play their starters. And so I don't have high hopes for Chicago. So I do have them knocking off Chicago in week 5. I believe I don't have them winning a game in the division until week 17, when I have them finishing off strong, winning 3 straight against Arizona, on the road at Tampa Bay, and on the road at Atlanta. I think by the end of the year, they're going to be, I wouldn't say contending, but I think they're going to be keeping games close. I mean, you got to think between week 12 and week 15, they have the gauntlet of Kansas City. What I just lost. Kansas City, Tampa Bay, at Philadelphia, and the Dallas Cowboys. And then they finish off the year home to Arizona, on the road, the last 2 games of the season at Tampa Bay and Atlanta. And I think they finally start putting it together. So I've got the Carolina Panthers finishing the season at 8-9, alongside the rest of the NFC South, which brings us to our prediction. You mentioned the fact that you got the Panthers at 5-12, finishing 3rd in the NFC South. You don't think that anybody in the division is going to be really outside of the division winner is going to make the playoff. And I think we can all agree, if you're watching this show, if you follow football, the NFC South has been the weakest division in football, with the exception of maybe the AFC South over the last couple of years. But I mean, a couple of years ago, when the Tampa Bay Buccaneers won the division, the last week of the season, I believe the Tampa Bay Buccaneers were 9-7. 9-8, whatever it was, to win the division, 1 game over 500. So I don't think it's a stretch to say that the NFC South will be, I wouldn't call it the least competitive, because if I've got everybody finishing at 8-9, that means that everybody is 1 game away from winning the division and making the playoffs. Shannon, you said you didn't believe in New Orleans. You thought that Tampa Bay was still formidable with Baker Mayfield and company, Mike Evans, Chris Godwin. You obviously Atlanta's going to be a new look Atlanta Falcons with Kirk Cousins at quarterback. Some new pieces on that offense. They're talking about Kyle Pitts being great in the preseason. I don't care. Preseason camp, nothing. Kyle Pitts is still he will never be the tight end people expected him to be out of college until he leaves Atlanta. But having said that, Atlanta has been the favorite in a lot of national pundits to win this division. Shannon, who do you have winning the NFC South in 2024?
As much as I hate to say it, I don't think it'll be a repeat. I think Atlanta will do it, but it will be by a small margin. I think that they'll either get one, maybe it'll probably be 2 games that will separate them in Tampa Bay. I don't really think it's going to be a landslide. I don't see Atlanta being like one of the top 4 teams in the NFC. I see Atlanta being probably that 5 or 6. But Tampa Bay will put up a fight. I think Tampa Bay will put up a fight, but it's just not enough.
Well, looking through, Shannon's got the Falcons winning the division. Looking through my predictions, I believe I had the Panthers splitting with Atlanta and Tampa Bay, but getting swept by the Saints. And I felt that was the difference. I think the Saints are going to struggle early on. Matter of fact, I've got the Saints starting 2-4. And having hold on, yeah, I was right. 2-4, 2-5, 2-6 before they sort of turn it around here. But I think they pick it up strong down the stretch. And for some reason, I'm thinking that I wrote this down wrong, but no, I didn't. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Yeah. So, and with New Orleans sweeping the Carolina Panthers and splitting with everyone else, the fact that everybody finishes in 8-9, I've got the Saints winning this division. Now, having said that, with the Saints struggling early, I think we see a change at quarterback for the New Orleans Saints, whether Derek Carr gets injured or whether Derek Carr his play is abysmal. I think by week 8 we see a change at guard, and I think Spencer Rattler, former Gamecock, you knew I was going to do it. I think former Gamecock Spencer Rattler takes over for the New Orleans Saints, wins that job, and turns the season around and leads the Saints to an NFC South division championship. But I'm with you. I think Atlanta's right there. I've got Atlanta starting off strong with some losses here and there in the middle of the season. I mean, you got to think their schedule's not easy either. Start off at home against the Steelers, then at Philly and Kansas City at home. Then they've got to go. They host Seattle. They host Dallas. They host they host the Chargers. And they play at Minnesota, which I've got them winning. So I think the schedule probably opens up where either the Saints or the Falcons win this division. I'm right there with you, but my official prediction is that the Saints win the division with everybody finishing 8-9. So we'll see how often does that happen, right? But
not very often.
Listen, an 8-win Carolina Panthers team is a huge improvement.
Yes.
From last year's 2-win campaign. So it'll be interesting to see how close I get and if my optimism is met with results on the field. I mean, we're a week away from getting to see what this Mike Canales led Carolina Panthers squad looks with second-year quarterback Bryce Young. Shannon, before we sign off, I told you it was going to be a short show. Before we sign off, you got anything you want to add before we let the audience go on about their day?
To go and echo off of what you're saying, an 8-win Carolina team would be great. You know, I would enjoy that. I'm pretty sure you would. I would like to see them win more than 2 games, you know, of course. And also the fact that you said that these teams go 9-8 together, like all of them go 9-8. That's also a not so unbelievable, to be honest with you, because with the way the NFC South has been, just the fact that, you know, you don't know what you're getting out of them with them being a weaker division compared to the others. I mean, I would see these guys try to, you know, have a civil war and just try to take each other out and just everybody falling. I do see that. And, you know, with the new look in Atlanta, the rebuilding of Carolina, Tampa Bay re-signing, and the Saints, we still don't know who they are. I knew that the homerism was going to come out of you with Spencer Rattler. He had a good preseason game against Tennessee. He threw the ball very, very well. I like seeing Spencer Rattler the way that he was playing. I think Derek Carr is on borrowed time. I agree with that. I do. So I was waiting on the homerism to come. I was waiting on that. I like it, but I don't see the Saints. I see the Saints tanking, and you know Spencer Rattler will probably get the ball next year, I would say, or towards the tail end of that year. I do see a quarterback change coming in New Orleans. I do see that. I don't think they believe in Derek Carr. I think Derek Carr's magic wore off when he was in Oakland before they even went to Las Vegas. So I get it. And so not far off with your predictions, not at all. And I can take that. I mean, I agree. I hope I'm wrong. Like for all the fans out there, I'm not trying to be a hater. I'm not trying to be a pessimist. I'm a realist at the end of the day. Eye test is what I look at. I'm going to be bringing up the eye test every time we're on this podcast. It's the eye test with me. I see it. I see what I'm seeing. And hopefully what I'm seeing is not going to be the end all be all. I'd love to see the Panthers 8 wins. I'd love the Panthers to see the playoffs. But I do think that there's going to be a change in Carolina, and it will be better than what we saw last year.
Well, next week we are going to get into it. Week 1 of the season, the Carolina Panthers will be on the road at the New Orleans Saints to start the 2024 regular season. For those of you who want to check us out wherever we are on social media, you can find Shannon Smith on X and Instagram at podcast_Smitty. You can find me on X at Tapouts and TDs, Facebook.com/tapouts and touchdowns, as well as my Instagram at Ryan W. Frick. I may be changing that handle because I tried to say that at a comedy show last week and it did not go over well. I had to say it like 4 times. So I may just change that to Ryan Frick Comedy. Who knows? If you want to follow the Cat Cave on our social media handles, Facebook.com/The Cat Cave FFSN. That's for Fans First Sports Network. On Instagram and X at The Cat Cave _FFSN. Make sure you are following us on our social medias. But until then, you may now exit the Cat Cave, but make sure to listen to more content on the Tobacco Road Sports Radio's YouTube channel and more Carolina Panthers themed podcasts on the Keep Pounding Podcast Network, powered by the Fans First Sports Network. For Shannon Smith, I'm Ryan Frick, and we will see you next week right back here inside the Cat Cave.
Go Panthers.